Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first ever She's the First Week of Action. We are so excited to be kicking off this week with you because both She's the First and social impact run through our veins. I'm Christen Brandt.
And I'm Tammy, and we're the co-founders of She's the First, as well as the new authors of Impact, your step-by-step plan to create the world that you want to live in. When we first started She's the First over a decade ago, to be honest, I don't know if we realized what we were getting ourselves into. We were in our early 20s, just a little bit older than you. So along the way, we really had to listen, learn, and grow. And this book captures our greatest lessons from the last decade. We're so thrilled to share it with you on November 17th. And during this week of action, we're actually touching upon many of the themes we wrote about. So it's like having a sneak preview of it with you all.
This book, Impact, and Taking Action for Girls' Rights and Girls' Education, these aren't things that we happen to do just out of the blue. They're incredibly personal for both of us. So I grew up surrounded by women. My mom had me at 19, so the two of us lived with my grandparents and a bunch of aunts for the first decade of my life. And I always look back on that experience as really shaping my understanding of women, of how strong we are when we come together, of the incredible things that we can achieve when we have support. But I also grew up understanding the ways in which men could use and abuse the power that the system gives to them, and the ways in which other people can suffer for that. So I believe in a world, in a future where every girl is safe and loved, and She's the First, and my work with She's the First has always been my outlet for that.
Yeah, step one of being an activist or an advocate is really connecting your personal story to the issues that you care about. So thank you, Christen, for sharing. I have a similar North Star as Christen, as you might guess, but I come at it from a different angle. In my case, I feel like I really won the lottery at birth. You know, I was born into a supportive household. My two parents in New Jersey, my parents, they told me and my sister that we could be anything that we wanted to. And this was in contrast to the way they grew up, because neither of them got to go to college. So their options were much more limited. So all I knew about being a first generation college student was that when I was in high school, I had to study really hard. So I worked on getting straight A's. And there was one area of my education that I really struggled, and that was classroom participation. I hated getting up in front of my classmates, give a presentation. Basically, what I'm doing right now was my worst nightmare as a high school student. I was so shy that by the time I graduated, my classmates had voted me most shy in the yearbook. That moment was such a wake-up call for me, because I realized that as an American girl, I was living in a safe environment. I had an education. I was able to experience my rights, to express myself and use my voice, but I wasn't doing that. I realized I was really wasting that potential that I had. So it was at that time I decided that I was going to go off to college and use my voice to help to transform the lives of women and girls around the world. And that led me on a path at first to be a journalism major and a journalist, and then eventually to She's the First.
I have a feeling that those of you watching today, you probably also showed up here in this space because you have your own personal reason for joining in this fight for girls' rights and for girls' education. So maybe you are also the first person in your family to attend college, or like me, something in your own history really sparks that fight for a better world for girls. Maybe you hate feeling powerless and you want to ensure that our systems work equitably for everyone. Maybe you want to pay forward that impact that others have had in your life. And so whatever that reason is, hold on tight to it. And throughout this week, let that reason kind of light a fire within you, because what you're feeling to right now connects to some of those hard facts on why it is so important to educate girls and protect their rights, protect all of our rights. Let's watch a quick video.
So this video was made 2 years ago, but it's not even out of date. In fact, it's more relevant than ever. It's never been more important to recognize that girls' education is the solution. And we don't have the luxury of putting this issue on the back burner in 2020. As we all know, girls impact everything: the economy, the environment, and the well-being of their families and communities. During this crazy COVID-19 year, you could turn on the news every single day, as I have, and you would never hear these facts. The fact that more than 20 million girls may not return to school when this pandemic is over. The Malala Fund calculated that based on data from after the Ebola epidemic in West Africa. We know that global health crises create an uptick in domestic violence, that it increases rates of forced and transactional sex for girls, and then in turn increases teen pregnancy rates. And it's not so easy, as schools have been shut down by governments, for girls to just continue learning at home when they don't have the ability to use a Wi-Fi connection and a computer screen as we're all doing today. We don't want to turn on the news a few years from now and hear that decades of progress for girls' education and rights and gender equality were unraveled due to COVID-19. While this is a dire situation, we still have a fighting chance to help girls everywhere, and we're going to dive into that more this week. This week will give you an opportunity to not only support that urgent global issue, but also related local ones in your own community.
So this week, we're going to ground our activism and all of our actions in girls' rights, because if girls aren't respected and heard, then even the best education doesn't matter much. So each day, we're going to hear from a girl activist working in 3 key focus areas. First will be menstrual health equity, then climate change and sustainability, and then finally leadership and representation. It can be easy to feel overwhelmed when it comes to taking action, and that's why we're here this week, to help you break it down. So before we do anything else, I want you to close your home right now, or you are likely somewhere by yourself. So just do it with me, okay? Close your eyes. I'll wait. Now take a deep breath. And I want you to think about sorry, looks like I was having some technical issues there. Do you feel like you were alone with your eyes closed and no voice guiding you anymore? Let's try that again, and hopefully our internet will stick with us. So go ahead and close your eyes. Take a deep breath. And I want you to think about the issues that make you most emotional. Think about what makes you angry, what makes you sad, what makes you feel small. Got it? Now I want you to picture the world and your world if that issue were resolved. So for me, when I do this exercise, I think about a world where girls finally are safe, where their gender doesn't impact the violence that they face. How does that change how you move through the world differently? How does it change how girls and women and femmes move through the world differently? You can open your eyes. But I want you to write this down somewhere you can find it later. I want you to write down, I'm committed to a world where, and then fill in that sentence with that world that you were just picturing. So for me, I would write down, I'm committed to a world where every girl feels safe and loved. That's my North Star. That's what keeps me motivated, and it's what all of my impact work revolves around. So take a minute now, scramble for the paper, find it, write it on the inside of a book. I'm committed to a world where.
I'm going to give you a few seconds to do that. All right, well, keep that paper handy, and throughout the week, feel free to tweak it and choose words that really light you up when you see it. All week, as Christen said, we're going to talk about different impact areas and ways that you as an individual, as well as all of us as a collective, can make a difference for girls locally and globally. I want to remind you that changing the world really does start with small actions. And this week is really oriented around how you can make smarter, small actions. And if at any moment you feel like, those small actions, how could they possibly create overwhelming, sweeping change? Well, I'm here to tell you not to doubt that, because I've seen over the past decade in leading She's the First, how we got to where we are today because of all the small steps that thousands and thousands of people took. To date, we have raised just about $10 million to support thousands of girls around the world. But no one wrote us $1 million check. That money was raised through average donation sizes of $25. The average fundraiser raises about $500. Collectively, you can see how all of that comes together to be able to do more than you could ever do on your own. So this week, we'll help you really hone in on those small actions that you can take every day. And we'll also show you how you can do that in a strategic way to have long-term sustainable change.
That's another reason that we're going to ask you to hold on to that piece of paper where you just wrote down, I'm committed to a world where. Because under that North Star, over the course of the next week, we want you to use all of the inspiration that you're going to get from the activists and leaders and students that you hear talk to write down the actions that you're going to take to reach that North Star. So by Sunday, you'll have a little mini action plan, a mini impact plan sitting in front of you of the actions that you want to take. Those can be small actions, one-time actions, actions that you're going to take over the course of time, big audacious actions, global actions, all kinds of things. And you'll get an example of the range of actions you can take to create impact all week long. So throughout this week, keep notes and write down what are some of the actions that you want to take to help achieve that world that you're committed to seeing. There's obviously no single magic wand or single action that's going to make sure that the entire world gets to this North Star of yours right away. But with these small actions and big actions and collective actions like the ones that we're taking now, we'll end up with a world that's better than we had before.
Today, there is an opportunity for you to ask us some questions, so please use the comments and we'll address that in a few. But before we get to that point, we just want to leave you with a few of our tips for your impact journey this week and beyond. First, we remind you to constantly think about who you're fighting for, not just what you're fighting for, not just the issues, but who are people who you personally know, or maybe who you look up to. Like a lot of us are thinking about RBG right now. Many of you through the She's the First network have come to know the stories of girls who have gotten their education and gone on to change their communities, and they never give up. I know I certainly think about them a lot when I'm having a tough day. So along with your North Star, keep that vision of a person that is going to inspire you. Second, remember that community is everything. We highly encourage you to get to know your action group leaders and everyone who's in your WhatsApp group. Of course, in another world, we would have been meeting in person at the She's the First Summit, and we certainly miss having that opportunity. But you've got to admit, there is something really unique and special about getting to connect with students that you wouldn't have been able to in an in-person event. So take advantage of that. And remember that you will get out of this experience what you put into it. We all know that we could tune into a webinar or watch a live stream every day if we wanted to, but you don't have the chance every day to be surrounded by a group of peers who share the same dreams as you do, but bring different life experiences to the table. So really get a chance to know each other so that you can cheer each other on, not just through the week of action, but even beyond. And third, we want to remind you to cash in on your unique value. Over the course of this week, you're going to quickly see how much you have to offer. And those resources come in many forms, money and time and skills. And the talents that you have are only yours. And that is needed in movements, especially for gender equality. So we're going to help you match those up to some really pressing and urgent needs. Above all, remember that you're not doing this work alone. Every single person here, and there are nearly 300 of you, is bringing a piece of the puzzle to the table. And together, we really can be a force for tangible change. So now we want to open it up to you. If you know what your commitment is going to be, please share it with us. And again, if you have those questions, we're going to get to them. But first, to help us with that, it is now my pleasure to introduce you to a colleague who holds many of the She's the First puzzle pieces together, Henna Parikh, our Development and Communications Manager. She'll help us moderate these questions now, and she'll be guiding you throughout the week. You may know her already as your biggest cheerleader on Instagram. She is the voice behind @She'sTheFirst. And here she is to lead us forward.
Thanks, Tammy. Hi, everyone. I'm Henna. I'm the Development and Communications Manager, as Tammy mentioned, at She's the First. And in 2 weeks, I'll be celebrating my 3-year anniversary with the organization. And so I've been so inspired by our student community's dedication and commitment to advocacy and activism for girls all over the world. And thank you, Tammy and Christen, for sharing so much about your story and enthusiasm for why we do what we do. So for the first question, I'll ask, how do you stay motivated in activism?
Great question. So one of our favorite interviews from Impact was with a woman, Kiko Feldman. And Kiko, she runs a program called Gender Nation. And it's a nonprofit. And what they do is they work to put more inclusive books, and specifically LGBTQ plus books, into elementary schools and schools right now in California, but hopefully soon all across the nation, with the idea being that, eventually more kids are exposed to more inclusive materials and are more understanding and more open, right? And we create a more equal society from, age 5 all the way up. And when I was talking to her about that work as part of our interviews for Changemakers, I asked her about this concept, about how do you stay motivated, and how do you build resiliency in the world of impact when it's so easy to feel like your contribution is so small and you can never really tell kind of what the impact of that might be. And she said a phrase that Tammy and I use a lot now with each other in this book, at She's the First, which is make plans to keep it going. And the reason I love that is because it's so easy to stop and look back on the actions that you've taken so far. And because you're not sure of the impact of them, it feels overwhelming. It feels like it's hard to push forward. And what I love about this phrase is that it's not about pushing yourself through. The phrase isn't keep going. It's not kind of this way that you force yourself to push forward and to keep doing the work. It's let's make plans to keep it going. And that idea of planning, of creating a plan, of writing down your to-do list of, okay, I'm going to take this action this week and this action next week, and here's a time when I can get together with a group and brainstorm more things. It's really powerful because it takes some of the pressure off of you actually taking an action right then and there. And it replaces it with the ability to sit down with your journal, with a notebook, and to just write down what is your plan. And once you have that plan, all you have to do is follow it, right? So that's one phrase that we go back to again and again. Let's make plans to keep it going.
I love that. I feel like it's so overwhelming right now. So this is such a great digestible way to do that. We have a second question, which we'll put on the screen, which is, what are some challenges you faced as activists?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Ethan. Well, I'm sure you'll probably relate that when you're a change maker, there is never-ending need, and you're constantly fixating on the problems that you want to be a part of solving, that it can become, and you have very limited resources in which to do that. So you can end up stretching yourself really thin. You could work constantly around the clock if you wanted to, but that is the perfect recipe for burnout. So I think we've learned the hard way sometimes on how to pour ourselves into the work while also setting some boundaries so that we do have time to recharge and celebrate our wins too. I am probably the most guilty of this. I'm a very goal-oriented person, and I'm always looking towards the next thing for me to do. That when I have accomplished something, I don't take much time to celebrate that. So, having a team to work with, in my case, every day she's the first staff. I think and Christen, as my co-founder, keeps me accountable to celebrating those moments, and to making sure that after putting in, a full day, that we do turn off a little bit, take the night to go on a walk, do some exercise, so that we can come back really refreshed the next day. Because once you burn out, you're not in service to anyone.
Thanks, Tammy. I hope that this also answers Allison's question of how do you adapt in the face of challenges. So if you do have another question, we have time for a couple more. So you can leave them in the chat and we'll continue to moderate them below. And then one other question we received is, sometimes a challenge feels way bigger than you. So where do you start in such a case?
Mm-hmm. I think most impact areas feel bigger than one person, and that's the challenge. And I think that's also where a lot of these questions about motivation, adapting in the face of challenges that you face, all of these come in because we're often not talking about a single day impact. We're often not talking about a single person with a challenge that you're trying to solve. Often when we think about impact and we think about our legacy with impact, we're thinking about these big, sticky, thorny impact areas that are hard to even kind of suss out what are the root causes of some of these impact areas. They are much bigger than one person. And I think what's important to keep in mind is that you are one person. And you're not going to solve world hunger tomorrow, right? That doesn't mean that solving world hunger shouldn't be your North Star, shouldn't be what drives you to get out of bed in the morning or something that you really want to work on. What it means is that you need to match your personal contributions and your individual actions with collective actions. And so when we say collective action, and this is something we talk about a lot, that just means when you get together with other people and you work together to achieve impact in that same impact area and in that same issue area. So what we're doing this week as part of Week of Action is that each day we're taking collective change of some kind, collective action of some kind in order to create change, right? We're working with other people. And I think that's a really, really important part of your own personal impact plan. You need to think about what are the things that I as an individual can do, right? And so that might be something like, if environmental sustainability is part of your impact plan. You might be forgoing straws. You might have reusable water bottle every time you go out. You're not buying disposable coffee cups, all of these things that impact how you live your life as an individual, so that your actions match your values and match the change that you're trying to create. But you're also going to team up with and work with organizations that are pushing for bigger systemic change along the way. And by matching those two together, by working with collectives and then taking individual actions, you can both live according to your values and feel good about the contribution you're making, while still actually pushing the needle forward through that collective action piece.
Yeah, and we are going to talk this week about that feeling of individual action and systemic accountability. So thanks, Christen, for touching upon that. Our next question is from Alice. Has your perfect world picture changed over the years, which also relates to another question that's similar, which is how has your vision for the organization changed over the years too?
Yeah, thanks, Alice. That's a very good question. Our vision has stayed the same from when we started on day one. Like, we wanted to see a world where girls could choose their own futures. I think the way we approach that vision has evolved. So in the very beginning, we thought, as She's the First, like, let's just try to get as many girls as we can to graduation, to be the first in their families to graduate high school. And that's how we'll measure success. As we got into the work and we talked more with our community-based partner organizations, we realized that if you're measuring success just by a paper diploma, then how are you going to account for when a girl graduates and maybe her family pressures her to immediately get married and to never join the workforce or have her own independence? And if it wasn't part of her education to learn how to speak up for herself and what she wanted and to be able to navigate those situations, did we really accomplish what we wanted? Are we in service of that vision? And the answer was no. Now, of course, in many cases, having that high school graduation is a sign of success, and most girls do go on to continue their education and follow their dreams. But creating change always ends up being more complex than you originally think when you start testing the waters. So that's when She's the First. We evolved our work from being we always value education. We evolved from being rooted just in the education aspect and to focusing more on girls' rights. Those of you who've been following She's the First, at least for the past year, know that last October, we launched the Global Girls Bill of Rights, which was made with the input of over 1,000 girls across many, many countries. And that just speaks to how when you want to set a girl up for success, it is not just about supporting an individual, but investing in programs that are going to also change her ecosystem and change the views of the community that she's a part of, that remove the barriers that will be standing in her way after she finishes her schooling. So the short answer would be, I think even in your own experiences, I wouldn't be surprised if your vision stays the same from now for the next 10, 20 plus years. But very likely, as you learn the best way to serve that vision, your tactics and your strategies can change, and that's okay. I mean, that's growth.
Mm-hmm. And you might also find that your North Star, that vision of a perfect world, you refine it. The more that you understand your own motivations, the more that you understand the issue and the challenge. Speaking personally, girls have always been incredibly important to me. And working with girls and girls' education has always really resonated with me. But it took me until a few years ago to be able to really fully articulate why, and to really kind of talk about my own background and the way that played into my idea of a North Star and what that kind of perfect future vision looks like. And you might find that that's true for you too. You might find that you're drawn to girls' education, and the easy answer when somebody asks you, why is this so important to you, is to talk about the statistics, is to talk about, girls are just as deserving as boys, is to talk about these things that are very impersonal. But what we found is that a lot of times the impact area you care about, there does tend to be personal connections. And the more that you explore that and the more that you understand that, you might find that you refine the language that you use and you're able to connect even more deeply to that vision of the future.
Thanks, Christen. So we're going to take a couple rapid fire questions. So I'm just going to ask you very quickly and you can spout off your answer. So the first would be, what are some of your advice pieces to aspiring leaders and community organizers who don't have prior experience?
Just get started. You have experience once you have one day of action, one day at a time.
Talk to people, ask experts, follow podcasts, read books, learn.
I love that. Okay, the next one, what were some of the most helpful resources you went about when you started She's the First?
I would say mentors. Start with who surrounds you and ask them for advice constantly.
People.
Awesome. Who is your greatest support system today?
My work wife and co-founder, Tammy Tibbetts.
Yes, I was going to say the same. I could not imagine running She's the First or writing a book without her.
Next one, how can one do the activism work perfectly to make a difference in the community?
You'll never be perfect. So just listen, take feedback, learn, and grow.
What's the phrase? Don't let perfect get in the way of better. Just try.
Awesome. And then thank you for everyone who, I believe there's one more. I'm sorry. There's one last one. What do you do to continue educating yourself and staying up to date with global news?
I subscribe to newsletters, and every week the She's the First program staff gives us presentations on what we should know about girls and what they're experiencing with COVID around the world.
Networking for me. So make sure that you are in touch with people who are into your issue area as well. They share the same North Star. They have experience in other areas, and then talk to them. Make sure that you're getting information about what's happening on the ground in different places so that you're up to date.
Thank you, Christen and Tammy. I really appreciated hearing all of your answers, and thank you to all of our viewers for asking such thoughtful questions. So if you'd like, you can continue to add comments here or at the hashtag STF Week of Action, and the team can get back to you. And now we're going to deep dive into what's coming up for the rest of the week so we can get into some logistics.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, so now that you're here, what's next? Over the next 3 days, we'll hear from different action partners who are focused on 3 different areas relating to our work and mission for girls. Let's take a look. So for example, we know that all menstruators deserve access to safe, quality, and accessible period products. Unfortunately, for millions of girls around the world, they don't always have access to tampons, pads, and other menstrual hygiene needs. And when they do, period products are unfairly taxed or priced, and that's an economic double standard that menstruators don't deserve. So tomorrow, we'll tackle the issue of menstrual health equity with our action partner, Period Equity. We'll hear from Period Equity's co-founder, Laura Strassfield, and who's helped to repeal the tampon tax in states across the United States. And she'll inform us more about the issue and how we can fight to remove this discriminatory tax once and for all. On Friday, we'll tackle another issue that Tammy and Christen mentioned, one that's very closely related to girls' education and gender equality, even if it doesn't always seem that way: climate justice and sustainability. In fact, girls' education has been named one of the top ways to fight climate change. And we're going to hear from 2 young women who've been staunch advocates for gender equality and sustainability as they go hand in hand. Twin activists Miriam and Naval will join us to share about the climate crisis and how we can act now for a more sustainable planet wherever we are. Come Saturday, we'll be talking all things leadership and representation. We know that you can't be what you can't see, and that's why this is so important for girls everywhere to see leadership that looks like them. We'll be joined by Adrienne Wright of I Will Not Be Quiet, a community group that creates a sacred space for women and girls to learn about the political and social issues that affect them. She'll teach us how to host our own talking circles and create safe spaces for others. We'll also hear from our besties at her campus, where co-founder Stephanie Kaplan-Lewis will share about our new initiative to get female students elected into campus office. So however you decide to act that day, there are lots of ways we'll increase representation for girls and women together. And then finally, on Sunday, we'll come together to share all that we've accomplished over the week, reflect on powerful moments or actions taken, and how we can continue to support girls' issues and girls' rights moving forward, especially in this time when girls can't wait for support. We'll be joined by some special guests that day too, as we launch our newest campaign, and we want you to be the first to know and the first to join us. So be sure to tune in and celebrate with us. So now I've just thrown a lot of information at you. So how will you stay up to date? It's easy with our action group leaders. Earlier, you received an email assigning you to a specific group with a designated action group leader. They'll send you reminders, share prompts, and the daily action guides, and they'll be a resource for any questions you may have. Plus, they'll facilitate discussions within your group where you'll find students from all different schools in your time zone. So though we can't be together in person at the summit like we normally do each year, we hope you'll get to network and meet with lots of your peers. That connection truly is magical. And like Christen and Tammy said, talking to one another truly is so worth it. So let's give a big thank you to our action group leaders who we could not have hosted this event without. Alice Fardstrom, Ananya Jain, Anika Mukher, Carly McFall, Chloe Bone, Elizabeth Gallagher, Elsie Chacha, Farah Clark, Jenna Whitaker, Karina Behera, Katie Austin, Christina Kama, Lana Wine, Najee Newton, Omara Ortiz, Sarah Christie, Shakira Mwakitawa, Tanisha Coley, Anusha Roy, Sanjana V, Danny Antonio, Tess Iding, and Wairimu Mahome. In fact, I'd love to invite a couple of our action group leaders to come join us and share a little bit more about why they're so excited for the next 4 days. Please welcome Danny, Naja, and Shakira. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi.
I'd love if you could share maybe a little bit more about who you are and what excited you to join us today.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Danny, and I'm from the Philippines. I'm about to enter my freshman year in UC Davis and continue my involvement with She's the First through that chapter in the spring. And for what excited me to join today, I think it would just be knowing that I have the ability to help someone and also learn from someone, especially with everything that's going on in the world today. And this initiative by She's the First, I guess, ignited some sort of spark within me to want to take concrete action and tangible action instead of just like sitting back and watching everything happen. Yeah, so with that, I'm going to pass the question along to Najee. What inspired you to join as an action group leader, and what are you most excited for?
Hi, my name is Najee. I'm a senior at the College of New Jersey. As far as like joining or volunteering to be an action leader, so when I first heard about She's the First, I immediately knew I needed to get involved on my campus. I am really passionate about education itself and also women's girls' rights. As far as becoming an action leader, well, we talked about like a small step to a bigger change. This is my small action in a bigger change. I knew I had to get more deeply involved in the organization and also making change in the world in general. What I'm most excited about is just know more about the organizations that are partnering and also getting to know you guys as well. So I'll pass the question along. So Shakira, what are the most passionate about and why?
Hi everyone, my name is Shakira and I'm a high school senior from Nairobi, Kenya, and I'm mostly excited to broaden my scope of knowledge and interacting with people to be able to learn more about advocating for girls' rights. And I'm most passionate about the menstrual equity session, and I'm really excited to learn more about ways I can help give access to girls the opportunity to get menstrual products and all that. And yeah, that's pretty much what I'm excited about.
Thank you, you three. I'm equally excited about what we're all going to accomplish together. So very excited to have you join us and be such incredible student peer and role model leaders for everyone else.
Thank you.
Of course. So over the next 5 days, as we learn and make change, I hope you'll share about your experience on social media with the hashtag STF Week of Action and tag She's the First. As the comms person, I'll repost and share everything that you're doing throughout the week. So who's ready to do this? I know that I sure am, and so is the rest of Team She's the First. So here's what you can expect next. Tomorrow, you'll receive a prompt and reminder from your action group leader, and then we'll meet back here on YouTube over at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we'll learn about the issue of menstrual health equity, and then we'll start calling and emailing reps to repeal that discriminatory tampon tax at 4 p.m., which of course can be changed into your time zone. With hundreds of students reaching out tomorrow and throughout the next week, we have the very real chance to make an immediate impact. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat or ask your action group leader. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow. Stay safe, everyone, and have a good rest of your day.